Computer. Well, it could. I mean, you know, if you're walking outside the back of the shul, you hear the shofar, you come late, but you hear the Megillah, it could happen.
Said about COVID.
Hundreds of shurim on Kavana and mitzvahs and that's
Right. So there's a big Indian by it. But the point is, you're outside, and it's happening inside. And Tosafot had cited 3 different locations in Shas that dealt with this question. Gemara Rosh Hashanah. We had a Gemara in Eruvin. Then we had 3 others. Gemara Eruvin about the small location, the large location. They're next to each other. You have some part of the minyan in one place, part of the minyan in the other. 9 and 1, 1 and 9. Yeah. Then I'm reviewing. Then we went to the Gemara in Psachim that talked about part of the Korban, particularly Korban Pesach. It goes outside of the doorway. You know, there's a machloket there about whether it's considered already outside of the boundary of the city and therefore it has to be burned. You can't eat it anymore. So it's not mitzdariev, it's not part of it anymore once it's crossed the threshold. And the threshold is not like a doorway like we have. It's a massive thing. And then there was Tosafot there. So we saw Tosafot in Eruvin, Tosafot in Psachim. And then we went to the Gemara in Sota. And the Gemara in Sota was talking about Birkat Kohanim. So in Birkat Kohanim, we also had the question of if the people are standing behind the Kohanim, it doesn't work. And the Gemara said, what if there's a Mechitza blocking between where the Kohanim are facing and the people who are standing facing, but there's a Mechitza there. And the Gemara in contexts 2 and 3, right? In the Gemara in Psachim and the Gemara in Sota have this sentence that Rabbi Shimon Levi says, Mechitza cannot impact the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. There's always a connection. And it sounds like a rhetorical flourish, a beautiful idea, but actually it turns out it has halachic teeth, basically. All right, Rabbi Shimon Levi, 3 lines off the bottom, page 1 on this handy-dandy handout, page 1 at the bottom, right? Damar Rabbi Shimon Levi, afilu mechitza shel Barzel, eino afseket b'nisrael avim shebashamayim. Like, wow, even an iron wall wouldn't separate between the Jewish people and Hashem, right? So that line was quoted also in the Gemara in Psachim that we saw about the Korban Pesach, because Rav had said not only is this true with regard to Korban Pesach going out of the boundary of Yerushalayim, or out of the city, it's Yerushalayim, and then he can't eat it, but more than that, v'chein l'tefillah. And Rabbi Shimon Levi answered, no, not with regard to tefillah. With regard to tefillah, Mechitza shel Barzel wouldn't interrupt us and Hashem. We note that in the context of Gemara Eruvin that we saw, we looked it up. Gemara Eruvin, the people are the small room, the big room. There was no mention of Rabbi Shimon Levi. And our Gemara, or rather Mishnah and Gemara, made no mention of Rabbi Shimon Levi. So we were trying to reconcile, okay, well, what is that statement that he made? What does it refer to? We saw, and this was why I dropped anchor over here to go into this, right? Is we saw Tosafot on our page, Chav Zayin Amud Bet, and we saw Tosafot in Eruvin, Psachim, and now we're up to the Tosafot in Sota. But on Shavuos, I had the first half of the page, not the second half of the Tosafot continues. That seemed kind of pointless to try to get a quarter of the way through and then stop. So I'm back. Now we could do it with, here we are. So we're looking at the Tosafot, Mechitza Mai. There's going to be some overlap on the Tosafot that we saw. Now, why did I drop anchor here? To show you the Bali Tosafot in different places in Shas, they're cross-referencing this part and that part in all the sections, but wherever the Tosafot is on the page, typically it's related to whatever's on the page. And then the other parts are being referenced sort of as the out-of-towners from other parts in Shas, yeah? I don't do this every time I learn Gemara. I learn a Tosafos. You learn one Tosafos. But the main rule of Tosafos, which is not always easy for me to live by, and maybe not for you either, but definitely not for me, is you can't be lazy. You mustn't be lazy. If you want to understand Tosafos, unless you already know Shas cold, you're going to quote from another place. The whole point is you've got to look it up, or you're not going to know what he's talking about or why it's even a contradiction or a problem. Yeah, Mark, please.
Just the launching point here from the second Rosh Hashanah is that there was this concept that if you were hearing the shofar from an inside to an outside.
Right, you're outside.
You're outside.
You're Yotzei.
You be Yotzei. Okay, I just wanted to.
So that led us into the whole discussion in Tosafot on our page, where it was saying, well, wait a minute, there was no quotation here, seemingly no quotation required. And Mechitza shel Barzel is not mafsik. Why was it such a foregone conclusion? It's so obvious if you're outside, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, why? Why would that be? Right? So we talked about the idea In Eruvin, it had to do with the tseiruf of the people to make a minyan. In Psachim, it had to do maybe with the idea that somehow you have to still be connected to the space to be part of the minyan. Dvarim Shebik Kedusha. Gemara in Sota, Gemara in Sota, obvious. Birkat Kohanim. Behind the Kohanim, that's not going to work. So you're standing in front of them. So why would it's going to work even if there's a Mechitza? If you're standing behind them, why doesn't it work? Someone said, I think it was in our shir. Well, maybe it was on Shabbos, the Parsha shir. Someone said, well, if they have their hands up, we just go all the way around the world and get them from the back. But it doesn't work like that. The people who are standing behind the Kohanim, the assumption is they don't care about the bracha, they don't get the bracha. So the Gemara allows the person to be standing in front of them with a mechitza. So that's where Shimon Levi came in. Mechitza Barzel couldn't interrupt. There's a pole in the shul, there's something, some object, whatever it is. And that's where we got into discussion related about women in shul, being part of shul, being connected to shul, being able to answer Dvarim Shebik Kedusha. But a question, if there isn't a minyan on the men's side, if you could have 6 men on the men's side and 4 men hanging out on the empty women's side, if that would be a ketzer for the minyan, and it's not clear that that's true at all, because it's 2 separate reshuyot. It was 9 and 1, so if the men's section is larger than the women's section, so then nicha, but otherwise it doesn't really work. And well, we talked about that. But now we're up to Tosafot on in the Gemara Sota about Birkat Kohanim. Again, in the back of our mind, where this is anchored in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, is what was this? I forgot to say. I'm sorry. What was the unique part about Rosh Hashanah? You don't need to be part of a minyan to be Mekayim the mitzvah of shofar. It's nicer, but you're not being Mekayim the mitzvah in a minyan and not being Mekayim it as a yachid. People blow at home. They go to a hospital, if God forbid they have to, right? It's all different reasons why they're going to have to do that. And Megillah, Baravam Hadrat Melech, that's a Hidur, but it's not the Yikuva. Yeah, and it's you go visit somebody, you have it in Rishon sometimes, unfortunately, for actually almost every Purim so far that I'm here. It's almost we're going on 2 decades over here. It's the reality. People are home, they can't make it out. So someone come to the house, read it for them,
or in the hospital.
Or hospital also. So that, yeah, we have that also. But the idea I'm driving at is, it's not a davar shebik kedusha, shofar and Megillah. Doesn't require a minyan, now that you're connected to a minyan, nor are you part of the tseiruf of a minyan. You're just listening in, as Mark points out accurately. Then you get into the whole sugya, which we're going to get into, which we're not up to yet, about mitzvot tzrichot kavana, d'oraita, d'rabbanan. What does it mean? Do you have to have in mind as the listener? What about the guy blowing the shofar? Does he have to have you in mind? He doesn't know you're there. You're behind a wall. You're on the back side of the shul. So we'll get to them. Huh? In Chulin? Oh, yeah?
With, if you're shefting.
Marvel team-ups. Are you not having enough kavana?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good example. Look with me at Mechitza Mai, Tosafot, Dibur Madchi, Mechitza Mai, page 1. This is 1, and the back is 2. So now I got it right with the Gemara Sota, Lamed Chaman Abed. Mechitza Mai. Yesh Lomer Dedavka B'Delo Anise Kam Boilei. It sounds like the way the Gemara was talking about this was a Mechitza and Mechitza Barzel. It must be that it's not that they had no choice. Aval B'Da Anuse Pshita. If they had no choice, they had to be behind a wall. Again, there's a pillar, and there's so many people, you're stuck behind a pillar. That's your honest. What could you do? There's no way to move. So, Beseder. So, Pshita, that's obvious. It must be, Dafka, you chose to be behind the Mechitza. Don't ask me why. You chose to. You're in the shul. It's COVID. So, you're inside the shul, but you put up a Mechitza. Demi Gara Me'achem Shebasadot. What's a Chem Shebasadot? We're going to get to this actually also in Masechet Rosh Hashanah in a bit of a different context. When the Birkat Kohanim happened, it's not like today where Baruch Hashem, you could choose your minyan. You could go to visit Rabbi Lazovsky with the chickens. You could go to Yeshurun also with the chickens. You go to what's it called? A brisk is still davening at Vasikin, right? And then you don't like that. He goes 6:25 here, 6:30 over there, 6:40. There were not so many options. There's 1 minyan in the town, but people have to go to work. So the people who work in the fields, they can't work in the heat of the day at 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's not possible. When do they start? 4:30. So they're out in the field. They can't make it to the minyan. It's all discussions. Gemara, Mishnayos, and Brachos. And Gemara describe this. Davening Shmon Esrei, saying Shema up in the tree. Yeah. Why? You have to go to work. You have to make a living. What can you do? Today we have issues. You have to get to the train or something. In those days, you had to be at work. So the person says, but I'm missing out on Birkas Kohanim. So I said, no. If you're one of the Amsha Besadas, what can you do? You're stuck. You're honest. You have to be out in the field. So the Birkas Kohanim, when they raise their hands, they give the bracha. They have in mind everybody who's out ahead of them. Don't ask me if the shul was on the wrong side and it was, I don't know. But that's, they say that Am Shabbasados fanned out. The bracha went out of the shul, out to the field where the people were. So that's what it mentions here. So if you're going to say, the Migar Machem Shabbasadah, are they worse? The people in the Sadot, the people in the Sadot are not even in the building. They can't even hear it. We say, okay, they're included. So of course the people who are in the shul, but they're behind the Mechitza. There's a partition between them and where the Kohanim are standing. The Kohanim are still facing them. So of course that should work. But if you're going to say, Ilo ani say, I'm adif amsha chorei kohanim, but lo have sik mechitza. So if you're going to say they weren't forced to be behind a wall, but they chose to stand behind a wall, why are they any better off than the people who say, bracha, yeah, we'll stand behind the Kohanim? We say in the Gemara, if you stand behind the Kohanim, it shows you don't care about the bracha. If you're standing behind a wall by choice. So if you're going to ask me that, Yesh lomar am shachor hakohanim marin ba'atzman kilo in habracha chashuva beineihem. Dichtiv amor lahem. I'm a little late, but this would have been great for this past week's parsha in Chutz La'aretz, Parsha Naso. Amor lahem. That's right there in the parsha, in the mitzvah. Yeah. What does amor lahem mean? Panim keneged panim. Ve'inomdim achorei oref. They're standing behind the nape of the neck of the Kohanim. They're showing by their very action they really don't care. Al behefsik mechitza kevan delokay me achorei oref lav miltahi. But if they're standing with the mechitza blocking, they're not showing it's achorei oref. Okay. Delo chazina the copied krabahachi. We do not find that the Torah has a hakpada, that it has a care for this issue. It doesn't mention it. It says panim el panim, but not lav davka. I'm going to pause here for a minute just to tell you. I saw in one of the anthologies that I like to look at, and I can't tell you which one, to remember, that in Pressburg, I think in the time of Chassam Sofer, there was an Indian and people had a hakpada that for Birkat Kohanim, they would all try to cram onto the bima. So that when the Kohanim were standing in front of the shul, they would definitely be in the range right in front of them. And that in another place, I think it was in Pressburg, near Pressburg, there was a row of seats in the front row, where some of the people in this room actually like to sit in the shul. It was called the Birkas Kohanim Zitz. It was something called like that, like the Birkas Kohanim, because you had to be in range. So like you can't be off to the side, you can't be on the side of the shul. Forget the women's section. The main people made sure they moved over to be right in the line of sight. Mamash panim el panim. Now, it's not required li'ikuva because the Gemara here, in fact, goes on to say that even if it was b'tzdadin, it's still going to work. It's the same thing like in haza'ah. The haza'ah, we say, has to be direct, but what if it's a little to the side? It's still okay. It's behind, it's not going to work. So, Birkas Kohanim, we say it's going to be okay. But you should just be aware, there were places in Europe where there was their makpid, just stand straight in front of the Kohen, because panim el panim means just that, not off the diagonal. Yeah.
Just want to mention, I was in Rome one time, and
Oh.
the cupola,
Yeah.
the gigantic show.
Yeah.
And it was on Shabbos, and Julie
But they
was
did-
up and watching. The Kohanim actually came out and they were in front of 3 or 4 or 5 people, and nobody came to me. She felt really bad. But there was X amount of Kohanim.
Wait, doing Birkat Kohanim?
Yes, and they came out to the Kehila.
Wow.
So in other words, the 3 people, one would stand,
Wow.
3 or 4 there, one would stand in front of
Wow. That's pretty
I thought it was
crazy.
a really interesting mishap.
But how do they
That's pretty
see? I mean,
Huh?
the talus is over their
No,
head.
the towels was over their head, and the Kohanim were in front. I was here. The Kohanim was.
They're going right near all the people, though.
I mean, I didn't have a Kohen.
Take a long time. And not the women.
Huh?
Not the women.
No, not them.
Okay. Anyway,
They were way upstairs.
where were they? Huh?
They were in the gallery. upstairs.
I'm saying the Kohanim didn't aim upwards. So
No. They were directly in front of people.
okay. So it's just interesting. You hear about how the Birkat Kohanim developed when people thought, again, even though the Gemara says you do not have to be directly in front of them, but there were people who like a hiddur. So one of the places, I don't even understand how they could have done it. They were all trying to get onto the bima at the same time. All massing right there, so that you're right next to the Kohanim at the same time. I don't know. I guess if you have a small shul, you could do it. Judy, you want to say something? I feel like you had your hand up.
No,
Oh.
just
You're thinking about it. Okay. Well, I thought you went like this.
But the Kohanim wave their arms.
That's the drasha. Amor lahem, say it to them, as opposed to say it in their direction. Say it to them. So there's a drasha in the Medrash Halacha, panim el panim. That's all. Yeah. It's not what Rashi quotes. Rashi quotes, that should be deliberate and belev shalem. Should say it not in the bahala. Okay. Mehayi the sof Rosh Hashanah, Masechet Rosh Hashanah. Mashma dehuadin l'tfila. It sounds the end of Rosh Masech Shana. We'll get there soon. A couple of years. We're on Chav Chet. We'll get there with Lav and Hey. I'm not here for a race. You came to the wrong year for that. So over here we're slow but steady. But on Lamed Hey is going to be a discussion about davening for the people who are in Am Shabbos, not just the Birkat Kohen, maybe to daven for them. The Shul Tzibur has them in mind. Right? Don't let the secret out. You have also people, I don't come to Minin, but you have me in mind. You have me motzing me. Doesn't really work. But there's discussion. Parakate said Solin. It's also, this is what the Gemara we already saw. Aver sheyatza mikzato lechutz min ha'agaf v'lifnim kelifnim min ha'agaf v'lachutz kelachutz. The agaf is the place where the door groove, that the door goes into. It's like a hinge, basically, but it's that spot. So Amar Rav, let's tefillah. Rav wanted to say this for the tefillah. Pligi the Rabbi Shubin Levi, the Rabbi Shubin Levi, afila mechitza v'chulei. Even Mechitza Shel Barzel is what he had said there, yeah? Midikapashit Stama, the Gemara, Milta Rabbi Shubin Levi, since the stam of the Gemara was explained by Rabbi Shubin Levi, i.e., the Gemara was seemingly, Rav wanted to draw a parallel between what happens with the Korbanot and with regard to Tefillah in general, V'chein Tefillah. Rabbi Shubin Levi answered it. He essentially undermined it by saying his statement. The Gemara accepts his statement. Shma Mina, next page. The Kaima Lan, I'm on the left-hand side of the Kaima Lan, Kavate. We follow him halachically. Right? We follow him halachically. Bukhamadume, Dachi Pasuk Rabbeinu Chanano, the Bechol Duchta, Kaima Lan Kibeshua ben Levi. And it sounds like that's the psak of the Rabbeinu Chanano, Ben Chanano of Karun, in Tunisia, one of the earliest chachamim there of the world of Tunisian Jewry. So very important person. From him is the Rif, and etc. And you keep going from there. But Rabbeinu Chananel says, anytime you have Rabbi Shimon Levi, we follow him. Well, Maksha, Mipar Kol Gagot. Wait a minute. What about the Gemara in Erevin and Kol Gagot with the two spaces? The Yati Rabbi Zeira, Rabba Bar Rav Chanan, V'Yativ Abayi Gabayu, V'Yatve V'Kamre, Shma Mina Mimatnitin, Diure Gedola B'Ktana, Vein Diure Ktana B'Gedola. We say there's a Gemara there, which was in the vicinity of what we saw. Right? We saw Tzadi Bet Amud Bet, but on Tzadi Bet Amud Aleph, these Chachamim are sitting together, and Abayi is sitting with them, and the Shmua, what they heard, was they said, Shma Mina, based on the Mishnah, the people who live in the large space, they can incorporate the small one, but the people from the small one cannot be incorporated. The small one can be incorporated into the big one, but the big one cannot be incorporated into the small one. We had seen that. We said if there was the Shliach Tzibor was alone in a smaller room, and right next to it, adjacent to it, is a large room with 9, that's a minyan. But if it's the opposite, we don't symbolically move the 9 out of the small room to join the 1 in the large room. It doesn't work like that. So ad Tzibor begedola, right? And we had talked about this with the Tzibor. That was that whole Gemara there. We got to this point. Sorry, ad, and then it kept going. Tzibor begedola, ushliach tzibor beketana, yotzin dechovatan. Tzibor beketana, ushliach tzibor begedola, ein yotzin dechovatan. Right? This is just quoting the Gemara now in Tzadi Bet and Bet. Tisha begedola ve'echa bektana mitztarfin. Tisha bektana ve'echa begedola ein mitztarfin. It was true of the shliach tzibor. It was true even of making the minyan. V'hu adin gedola begedola. Even if it was a big room and a big room. What's a big room and a big room? 2 equally sized rooms. It doesn't have to mean literally 2 very large rooms. It means they're of the same size. Because if we said the point is when there's a smaller room and a larger room, the smaller room is in a certain way encompassed within the large room. It's bottled to the large room. But if there's 2 rooms that are exactly the same size, the leika l'meimer diure gedola begedola, you don't create a tseir for one or the other. Amal ina tefila lo amar afilu mechitza shel Barzel im afsaket. There's an argument from silence. In the Gemara in Erevin, there's no Rabbi Shua ben Levi. You're waiting for Rabbi Shua ben Levi to come and say, no Mechitza Shel Barzel shall interrupt between the Jewish people and Hashem. Doesn't say. Instead, it just says it's not going to work. Gedola begedola. You would have thought 6 and 4, 7 and 3, even 9 and 1, but it's 2 rooms of the same size. Okay, one's in one room, one's in the other room. They can hear each other through the door. No, not good enough. And Rabbi Shua ben Levi is nowhere to be found. I have a Rabbi Chanal said we pass him like him. Yeah, apparently not in the Gemara and Eruvin because it never came up. That's what Tosafot's wrestling with. Yeah.
Just when Tosafot says big room, small room, talking about size of the room or
Yeah.
size number of people?
No, size of the room.
So if you had 9 people in the small room and 1 in the big room.
Doesn't work. That was the Gemara.
Right.
Does not work.
You talking square footage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Size of the room. Yeah, literally. Yeah.
I mean, the Shliach Tzibur is in the big room.
Or if Shliach Tzibur is in the big room and all the people are in the little room, it doesn't work.
If
This
you-
can, I just explained, this can happen more easily than you realize, God forbid, at a Shiva house, but that's where it could come up, or at a wedding or something. You have a smaller room, opens to a larger room. There's a doorway with a mezuzah on it, so it's a separate place. And you get the other person, one guy standing ahead of everybody else. We had this more than once. We had to tell people, you go up, in some of the houses, there's one place where there's a dawn. I won't say whose house,
We
but
had it in my ship. Some people were upstairs and there's an
Okay,
office downstairs.
okay, wait.
An office downstairs.
okay, wait, but the crucial, well, we're going to get to it now. The crucial difference is going to be, do we have the closed circuit already of the energy? You need for this to close the circuit, we need 10 in one room. As soon as we have that, people could be outside and hanging on. But this Gemara from Eruvin being quoted here in the Gemara and Sota is we don't have that yet.
Okay.
That's the problem. It's very important to distinguish. Very important because you could have an overflow crowd just standing outside of the doorway and they're making the minyan. They're not. Excuse me. They're part of the minyan. They're not making the minyan. That's the crucial distinction. I'm just saying we've had this where you have a smaller, narrow hallway area opens to a large living room or dining room. The people are all standing in the hallway. I don't know. They like it better. Don't ask me why. They just are. And then they put the Shliach Tzibur. It opens to a big dining room, which has a separate doorway with a mezuzah, and there's a dining room table. So there's he's the chazan. He's the guy. So he's holding it. Yeah, but you're by yourself, man. You don't have a minyan with you. Move a minyan. Now, if there was a minyan in the dining room, I'm making up this case, but minyan in the dining room with that Avel, right? He's the minyan. It's not him and 9 other people, and then everybody else in the hallway. No problem. They're all connected.
That's overflow. That's fine.
Yeah, overflow good.
Right.
But making the minyan needs to be. So that point of Tosafot is, okay, did you notice Rabbi Shimon Levi did not get quoted in the Gemara and Eruvin? I thought the halacha follows him. So why isn't it there? Yeah. So again, if you're learning Gemara Sota, like, I don't know, what am I holding by what's going on in Eruvin? I'm learning Sota now. Yeah, but now you see they're all these pieces are all connected. It's what the Bali Tosafot we're doing. So Nachum, let's just go back in. What time is it? Okay, I've got time. I also want to see some Gemara tonight. New Gemara. Where am I? Where am I? V'shleach tzibur imad v'acha b'gedola ki yotze ba mitoch shemotzi. No, that was wrong. Amal in tefillah lo amar for the Mechitza Shel Barzel in second. Right. Therefore, in that case where there's 6 and 4, even 9 and 1, but they're in the wrong configuration. Shliach tzibur is in the big room. The 9 are in the little room. It's not going to work. And there, nobody said afilu Mechitza Shel Barzel einam afseket. V'nira dulo dami. They're not comparable. Dehecha deika asara begedola ushliach tzibur imahen ve'echad begedola ki yotze ba mitoch shemotzi b'nei hagedola yotze gam ze sheba acheret. Right. Ki hagavna. So they're in different rooms, but there's already a minyan in one of the rooms. Then it's fine. Sorry, ki hagavna amrinan davka afilu mechitza v'chulei. So in that case, you say even if there's a mechitza shel barzel, because the person listening to a minyan that is behind the partition, they're listening to the minyan, but there is a minyan in there. But if you're making the minyan, there is a mechitza, maybe a barzel or maybe just the spaces or what have you. Shahari motzi afilu echav shel sadot. He'd be motzi the people even in the Sota. We didn't see that yet, but on page 35a, coming attractions, about davening and having in mind the people who are even in the field. If you have to make that seiruf, the combination, that will not work. Okay, you got it? You need them to make the minyan, everybody's got to be there. Or it's got to be a smaller room with the minority of the people and a large room with the majority in there. Drawn in. It's something that's very hard to know what the difference is. How are you going to figure out? Unfortunately, it wasn't so long ago in your house. How are we going to figure out what's larger? Your dining room, your den, your living room, your kitchen. I have to make the minyan. We're starting. So make sure there's a minyan in the dining room. Then you got people in the living room, people in the kitchen, wherever they want to be. If you can hear the minyan, you're part of it. Yeah, please.
Halacha lema'aseh, I don't know if anybody davened in Rehov Rabbi Akiva, Bnei Brak, the mincha.
Let's see.
The on and on.
It's a minyan factor.
And people just enter the minyan.
Yeah, need the minyan in the room.
Room or not, it's obvious.
But you need the room. The core has to be with the minyan there.
So would that be a qualifier for Rabbi Shimon Levi?
Yeah. That's what Tosafot is saying. And and the proof is it wasn't quoted in the Gemara in Eruvin. We're waiting for that statement because Rabbi Chananel says he because it was in the context of the doorway of Yerushalayim. It was in the context, right? You're waiting for him to say it. It doesn't come up. How come? That's why. It doesn't apply. Yeah.
Probably covers, but I don't understand why the size of the room should make a difference.
We did cover it when we talked about the Gemara Eruvin. There's a halacha in Masechet Eruvin. Generally, the smaller room that is adjacent to or coming off of a larger room, in some circumstances, is batel to the larger room. It has nafka minot in terms of Eruvin on Shabbos and Erev Chatzerot, etc. Yeah. The Hayid of Perek in Omdin. That's the 5th chapter of Masechet Brachot. The Amar Rabbi Elazar Yom Shechar Beit Hamikdash Nifsika Chomat Barzel Beit Yisrael V'Insh B'Shamayim. It seems like the exact opposite, right? Rabbi Shimon Levi said there's no Mechitza Shel Barzel, couldn't separate us. But then someone else, another Chacham, Rabbi Elazar says from the day of the Churban, there's Mechitza Shel Barzel interrupting. Lo Shaykh L'Hacha, that does not obtain here. The Ha'i Amar Legabe Ha She'ein Tfilatin Mekubelet K'mo Bizman Shebeit Mikdash Kayim. That statement, Rabbi Elazar, was about prayers, acceptance by Hashem. And it's harder for the tefillos to get to Hashem, so to speak. Or you could say it the other way, when there was a base of Mikdash, it was much easier. And now we don't have that conduit and that pathway. But for this matter, the matter of Birkat Kohanim, it does not matter. There's no Mechitza of Barzel that could interrupt. All right, Shemon b'Beit HaKnesset, or Yotzi Shatz, Yidei Chavatan, or for the Shliach Tzur, Motzi, the people in Yidei Chavatan, if you're outside of the room, Gam Zayit Barech, you'd also have the bracha. V'Yotzi, Yidei Chavatan, Iman, the Klapi Vinish B'Shemaim, Lo Tali B'Hefsek Mechitza. When it has to do with the Avinish B'Shemaim, there's no hefsek of Mechitza that could separate us from Hashem. So Tosafot is trying to answer one other contradiction. We didn't see this Gemara in Brachot that says, from the time of the Churban, there is a Mechitza Barzel. So there isn't or there is. In the halachic context, in almost all of these contexts, the quotation was Dafka of Rabbi Shimon Levi, and the point of his quotation was as a matter of halacha. But in the case of Rabbi Elazar, he's talking about the receptivity of the prayers themselves. So on one level, Rabbi Shimon Levi is saying the capacity for prayer as a group to receive brachot from Hashem, etc., all of that still works. Even if there was a Mechitza Shel Barzel, wouldn't stop us. But when there was the Beit HaMikdash, we had a much easier way of it, or time of it, I should say, in terms of our communication with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, in terms of tefillah being accepted. And it's harder now. That's it. And that one is not quoted in the context of halacha about minyan or Birkat Kohanim or things like that. Yeah. So, okay. Now we just saw Tosafot from 4 different angles. Huh?
Because of puzzle.
Okay.
That makes it unique.
Unique, right? But not. It's unique because it's unique to Birkat Kohanim that has to be face to face.
Right.
It can't be behind. But it's the way that it's being applied. The Gemara Sota is Davka. You can flip back to the other page, page 1, 3 lines up from the bottom. Mechitza Mai Tashma, right? The Amar Rabbi Shimon Levi Afilu Mechitza Shel Barzel in Mafseket Ben Yisrael V'Im Sh'Shamayim. That's what's right there. It's quoted in a halachic context. It wasn't an agadic piece. They were discussing the halacha of if there's a mechitza, why would it work? Answer: because Rabbi Shimon Levi said.
So in the Shiva house, let's say we would have put the stender where the mezuzah is between the 2 rooms, because really it was like the dining room and then the living room. I think we kind of had the door to the.
If you put it like mamash in the middle,
so let's say you put it right where the doorpost is
in the doorway.
So you're
half and
kind of
half.
saying this is all one big space.
I don't
Would
know.
you have done something like that?
Determining if it's 1 space or 2 spaces has nothing to do with where the cot is standing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
also,
they use the example of the
It wouldn't bottle. Yeah.
room.
I think Francie's right. You wouldn't bottle the reality. It's still 2 places. You're standing mamash in the doorway.
when it's an
5 and
arch,
5. I
when
don't
it's an archway, if that archway, which is an architectural detail rather than a structural detail, it's really tzura not peta.
Yeah.
And
Well, it depends. Where
Yeah.
there's all questions about archways, the supporting wall, or is it actually a doorway between two rooms. That you're getting now into the world of mezuzah and chatzeret and erevim, which is like too far afield. He was just asking me if you're straddling. I don't know the answer. I'll tell the chaz move this way or that way. Pick a spot. Yeah, it's a good point. I don't think you can hedge and be in two places at once. I don't think so. So go with me now, please. Let's journey to the Gemara. With the 12 minutes left, why should we waste the time? We have to learn. We're picking up stakes. We're going to the next piece in the Gemara here. Yeah. So Daf Chav Chet Amud Aleph. You remember we had learned pretty much about the idea of the breaking of the sound into pieces, into parts, the bore, you're in the bore, out of the bore, on the edge of the bore. We talked about those sugyas, but there's a major shas sugya. If you look, how many lines down is it? Probably 15 lines down or so. It's about almost halfway down the page. The first word on the line is babor. There's a kamashmalan, kuf ben lamed kamashmalan, Amar Rav Yehuda, b'shofar sha'ola.
Yeah.
You see it? Amar Rav Yehuda, b'shofar sha'ola. In my Gemara, it's like almost flush up against the Rabbeinu Chananel is on the left-hand column. Follow your eye along from there. It's a few lines down from Amudar Hanami Shofar and Tosafot. First word is babor on the line. So come me'arbev kala kamashman. Amar Rav Yehuda b'shofar. You got it. Amar Rav Yehuda b'shofar sha'ola lo yitka v'imtaka yatsa b'shofar sh'shlamim lo yitka v'imtaka lo yatsa. Very cryptic. Rav Yehuda says if you have a shofar from a korban ola, I'll stop right there. Korban ola, all of it is meant to be consumed except for the hide. They flay it, but everything else, I mean, not the parts that are like from the inside of the intestines has to be cleaned out and all that. But basically, it's being completely offered. So that's an ola. Don't do that. Don't use that for the shofar. Well, how did you get the shofar in the first place? But assuming you somehow had the shofar from an ola, so you shouldn't use it for shofar. But if you did, you're yotze. However, if you have a korban shlamim, again, korban shlamim, so there, I don't know, the korban seems like it's going to be partially eaten, and the part's going to be eaten won't include the horn, like from the animal, but that doesn't have to be offered necessarily as part of the korban. So why is that not going to work, even b'diavad? So the Gemara,
They cut the horn.
oh, so that's a pathway right there. Look at Rashi. What?
Would that be Meila if you take it from?
So we're going to get to Meila in a second. Hold on.
You put the
First look at Sha'ola. Look at Rashi. Dibur matcha Sha'ola. It's higher up than this Gemara. The first word on the line is Ha'omdim, Bebor Yatsu, and then the Dibur matcha we need is Sha'ola. The Tal Shemachayim. It's that it got detached or you picked it off while it was still alive. Di'ila la'achar zrika, ein me'ila, lo ba'orav, lo ba'karnea, sha'kol kohanim. Because if it was already after the zrika adam, right? That's not really going to be it's not going to be me'ila, because those parts are actually the skin and the horns. I'm sorry, do go to the kohanim. Right? Namar lo yeba ola, v'namar lo yeba asham. Ma asham atzmota mutarin, af ola atzmotea mutarin. The asham and the ola have something in common. That other than the parts that are being burned, the bony parts, i.e., the horn, plus the hide, it's going to belong to the Kohen anyway. So that's the case, right? If it's lifnei zrika la'achar zrika. So lifnei zrika, the korban belongs to Hekdesh. After the zrika, the parts that have to go on the mizbech have to go on the mizbech, but the parts that aren't going to go on the mizbech belong to the kohanim, and that's it. The skin, the horns. So how is shlamim different? Look back in the Gemara. Vimtaka lo yatsa with the shlamim. My taima. The Gemara asks my taima. Ola bat me'ilahi kivad the malba nafkala lechulin. The ola is subject to me'ila. Me'ila in English, the word is trespass. Trespass means I took something from the hekdesh, and by doing so, in that action, I've deconsecrated it. I pay a penalty for that, but it belongs to me now. That's basically what Me'ila is. By P.S., Me'ila is only when you do something by accident. There's no Me'ila b'mezid. All right, so what happens? No, so then you're actually using something a hekdesh. That's very bad. Okay, so the me'ila is the step down as a result of the inadvertent trespass of using something that belongs to hekdesh.
So if it's not
Working
Milah
definition.
in the Ola, why can't the Fatila?
Right, so that's the question. They're giving the mal, ba nafka la lechulin. Shlamim delavine me'ilaninhu isurahu. Right. What is this? The shlamim is not subject to me'ila. Why not? Because the shlamim. What?
The person who brings it and the corn.
Exactly, because the person who brings it is going to eat it. It's the next step. They're actually going to consume it.
Yeah.
Follow? It's and if he's going to consume it, then it has a status still of being something that's associated with a korban. What's the name of the status that accrues to an object that is a shlamim that you can eat afterward? What level of kedusha is it? Kachim kalim. Kachim kalim can be eaten within the borders of Yerushalayim. See under Gemara Psachim, our conversation of the eating inside the city, taking it outside the city, the doorway, etc. So right, Shlomim la ben isurahu derachid, right? Lo nafkil chulin. You're eating something that's actually an isur. You're taking it for something that's an isur. You don't have permission to do that, right? And therefore, somehow using that object is maybe in some way, maybe our good old idea from way back when. Maybe it's a mitzvah baba avera. Because you're using the object. Look at Rashi. Rashi tibur matcha shlamim lav b'nei me'ila ninhu. Shlamim lav b'nei me'ila ninhu. De'em me'ila b'kadshim kalim. Ela be'emurim. That's the parts that are going up on the mizbech. Ula'acha zrika. Kshehuveru l'chela gavoa. It's after the zrika, right? Remember, the korban is actually I'm sure everybody knows this from the daf. You have your shechita, kabbalat hadam, holacha, zrika. P.S. You also have to burn the parts on the mizbech. But after the zrika, the status of whatever's left of that korban is going to change before the haktara even of the parts of the animal. So in other words, in terms of a korban shlamim, before the zrika, okay, you could say that it's part of hekdesh because you consecrated this animal to give as a korban, but you consecrated as a korban shlamim. So once consecrated the korban shlamim, the moment the zrika has happened, the parts of the animal that are not going to go al gabe hamizbeach, you get to eat, cook, roast, whatever it is, and eat in Yerushalayim. So now that's not subject to me'ila because it's after the zrika. In the case of the korban ola, with the horns and the skins, that belongs to hekdesh. It's subject to me'ila only before the zrika happened. That's what we saw before, right? Once there's no me'ila. Once the zrika has already happened, the whole thing belongs to the kohen. They can do whatever they want with it. Here, the point is that these objects, because they're not going to eat the hides and the horns, it means it belongs to them. Mamash is property of the kohanim to do whatever you want. You want to sell it, you want to lend it to your friend. Doesn't matter. So that's fine. But in terms of the korban, once you have a korban shlamim, so that status of it, it's kachim kalim. While there's still meat left over, it can be eaten. Okay, so that's the point. So now matkifla back in the Gemara. I have like 2 minutes left, but we'll use it wisely. Matkifla Rava, emat mal lebater detaka. So when did the me'ila happen? After he finished doing the tekiah. Ki kataka bisurataka. Yeah, but the guy blew the shofar. That was Be'isr, he blew the shofar because it still belonged to hekdesh. Only went to me'ila after you use it. That's when the me'ila happens. So at the moment that he used it, it was still Asr, Rava asks. So how can you say he was Yotze with the shofar Sha'ola? Ela Amar Rava answers, don't question. Echad zeh ve'echad zeh lo yatsa. It must be that in neither case are you going to be Yotze, neither in the case of the Ola nor in the case of the Shlomim. Hadar Amar, but then he went back on himself and said, wait a second. Echad zeh ve'echad zeh yatsa. The truth is, both for Ola and for Shlomim, if you use the shofar, you're Yotze. Why? Mitzvot, lav, Leihanot, Nitnu. Because the mitzvot were not given for our personal enjoyment. Trespass means for my personal enjoyment. The violation of going into the world of the gizbar, of the treasury, and taking from hekdesh only obtains when it's for my personal benefit. but the mitzvot are not for my personal benefit, right? Which of course you could and should ask, aren't you getting schar? Isn't that a benefit? So for that, you got to come next week. We'll learn the Ritva. I photocopied, but then I didn't make all the copies. The Ritva and Rosh Hashanah, the Ritva and Sukkah, who addresses this exact question, because, what are you talking about here? But if you look at Rashi, just one last line. Rashi, lo leihanot nitnu, Rashi, lo leihanot nitnu liYisrael, liot kiumam lahem hana, el ol al tzavareim nitnu. I mean, it's pretty counterintuitive, yeah? If you love being a Jew, you enjoy it, you're not doing a hobby over here. You're doing the mitzvahs because God said it's a yoke around your neck. It's an ol al tzavar on our neck. That's what it is. You're working for Hashem. It's, being Oved Hashem. Of course, we have to get into, which maybe we'll get to, assuming it's not too philosophical for our purposes. But I'm supposed to enjoy being a Jew. I love being a Jew. I'm supposed to love being a Jew. I love learning. I love doing mitzvahs. I love serving Hashem. But is that the main motivator, or is that the cherry on top? And is that enough of a hana'ah? Clearly, it's not. Mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu. This is one of the headquarters Gemaras of the sugya of Mitzvot lav lehanot nitnu. So stay tuned next week. It's going to be super exciting. We'll see that, and Tikrot Avodah Zarah, and all different things related to this exciting topic. Ad Khan for tonight.